The town of Plainville. Established in 1721 at the geographical center of Connecticut.
Welcome everybody to our town council special meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. We have a presentation this evening to a very special person who has worked extensively and closely with the town council for many years. Carol, it's wonderful to see your smiling face tonight.
Good to see you.
Well, thank you. And we will certainly miss you. You know, as folks know, Carol's been our town clerk for a number of years and has gotten the town of Plainville through lots and lots of challenging events, most recently the election of this past November. So I do have a proclamation, and I know, Carol, that you are the person that usually puts this together. So I hope somebody did this on your behalf, because truthfully, you should just sit back, relax, and listen to all the nice things we're going to say about you.
I can assure you I did not do this one. Thank you.
All right. It is on the screen, but I will read it for those who are listening in or on a video. So the proclamation is for Carol A. Scultetti. Whereas Carol A. Scultetti began her employment with the town of Plainville over 22 years ago on June 1st, 1998 as Deputy Revenue Collector. And whereas in November 2001, Carol assumed the position of Deputy Town Clerk. And on January 3rd, 2003, was sworn in as Town Clerk, a position she has held and embraced for the past 17 years. And whereas Carol is known to be a hardworking and dedicated public servant, a steady, dependable coworker and friend who takes pride in her work and is always ready and willing to lend moral support or a helping hand when needed. And whereas, whether assisting the public, committing herself to the task at hand, or laboring through an unprecedented election season, Carol always has a smile on her face. And whereas during her tenure, Carol has embraced new technologies in the town clerk's office, implementing systems and programs that have improved and modernized function, efficiency, and accessibility. And whereas Carol has definitely served as the clerk of the council to 10 town councils. And whereas Carol has decided to retire from her position as Plainville Town Clerk and enjoy a well-earned permanent vacation that will be marked by more time spent with her husband, Dave, their children, grandchildren, and her 2 yellow labs. Now, therefore, we, the Plainville Town Council, do hereby express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to Carol A. Scultetti for a job well done and for her dedication and commitment to the town of Plainville, and offer our best wishes for a happy, healthy, long retirement. This is dated at Plainville, Connecticut, this 19th day of January, 2021 by the Plainville Town Council. It is signed by myself, Deborah J. Tompkins, Vice Chairwoman, Jesse Nazzo, Rosemary Moranti, Jacob Rocco, David Underwood, and Christopher Wazorko. So Carol, many, many thanks for all of your ongoing dedication to the town of Plainville. You have been a part of a lot of things, as we all know, but you have always done this job with enthusiasm, care, and the utmost concern for not only your coworkers in town, but for the public that would come in and ask for your help and assistance. So you are to be commended for an outstanding job. And I personally hope that you enjoy every moment of your upcoming retirement. So thank you so much. And I'm going to open this up to the council to offer their own personal well wishes to you. So anybody that would like to wish Carol a fond farewell, please do so.
Madam Chair.
Oh. Okay, go ahead, Rosemary.
Okay, yeah, Carol, just could not thank you enough for all that you have done for the town in such a professional, pleasant manner, always with a great sense of humor, and do things so efficiently, and wonderful working with your staff too, which is a testament to your leadership in that office. So also many thanks for the help you've given me with the Historical Society and letting me into the vault to look at a lot of those old records and books and voter records. And much appreciation for that as well. Have a great retirement, and it is great to be retired, Carol. I'll let you know. You'll enjoy it.
Chair Dave Underwood. Carol, I can honestly say that retirement is everything it says, everything they say about it is good. So congratulations.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Ozarka.
Carol, congratulations. You certainly deserve this. I want to thank you for all the help you've given me on the council, as well as personally when I've wandered into the town clerk's vault and not been able to find what I'm looking for. You've always been very helpful. You've done a great job with the department, with the staff. I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you for everything, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Deb.
Carol, you have been around for as long as I can remember, and I honestly cannot imagine what it's going to be like at the town hall without you, but I wish you and Dave the best and much happiness in the future. So congratulations.
Thank you, Deb.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Carol, I know I only got to work with you for a short time, and unfortunately, most of it was through a screen rather than in person, but it was a sweet time. I can't speak to how nice retirement is. I still have about 40 years to go before I get there, but I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Jacob.
Just one last mention I might want to add for Carol, and this came to mind when I was thinking about your last time with us, Carol, and I really have to mention the fact that you undertook an enormous task of going through electronically updating our charter and our ordinances. I know that you took on that challenge. You were the driving force behind that project. It took a very long time to get all of that in order, but it was because of all your efforts and attention to detail that we now have a document that anybody can access at any time to do any reference work. So that to me stands in my mind as an enormous task that you took on and successfully completed it, not just for the town council, but for all of our citizens who may want to go in and look up some information. So I do, again, congratulations, wonderful, healthy, happy retirement. I hope we'll see you again. And I would like to say at this moment that Cindy Porini is now our new town clerk. And I know that you've mentored her, so we'll be looking forward to working with Cindy going forward. So as your last council meeting, I hope you're not going to do the minutes. But again, many thanks for all of your efforts, Carol. Most sincere.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunities and the motivations. Dan Hurley was the motivator behind doing the codification, and going back to Peter Lennon, Bob Jackson, and Shirley that had the support to take over the position. And throughout the years, there's been some unforgettable and some memorable moments that will get me through. And Cindy, can't thank her enough. You are in great hands with Cindy Perini. She has just hit the ground running, and but I'm not going anywhere if anybody has any questions, or they just can't find something, or there's something stuck in the copier or in the mail machine, and I will gladly come back and try to help out at all possible. But thank you very much for the opportunity, and I will be very busy in my second chapter and looking forward to it. Stay healthy, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
We'll certainly miss you, no doubt, no question. Thanks again. All right, moving on. At the next portion of our presentation is a presentation to the Town Council and the Board of Education regarding the preliminary discussion of fiscal year 2022 budget. I will turn this over to our town manager, Robert Lee. Robert, if you're going to lead off, and then our superintendent of schools will probably at some point join us as well. Is that correct?
Yes, this joint meeting in many ways officially kicks off the beginning of the budget considerations for fiscal year 22 next year. And I want to thank Steve LePage and his staff, working with my staff to put together tonight's presentation. We will tag team, kind of go back and forth, so we won't hear too much of us all at one time. But our agenda for this evening includes a review of our fiscal year 21 budget summary, a little bit of a budget history, our current budget status on both the expenditures and the revenue side for both the town and the Board of Education, some preliminary budget discussion for the town and Board of Education for fiscal year 22. We'll have some discussion. You may want to advance that, Kevin, for the agenda. For the unassigned fund balance, we'll have some discussion about that, as well as the fiscal year 22 capital improvement plan, preliminary budget estimates, and the preliminary budget summary, and end it with some key budget dates. We have about 30 slides, but you know, a lot of them are relatively quick slides, so we anticipate that we'll get through them relatively quickly. If anybody has any questions, you can interrupt us if you want to, or we can wait till the end and just ask if you have any questions about the presentation. I will tell you that the presentation will be put up online first thing tomorrow morning, so if the public wants to see it as well. So with that in mind, next slide, Kevin. Our budget stands at a little bit under $62.5 million. That's our current year budget. And remind people that that budget resulted in a no tax increase for the current fiscal year. Just a very quick summary of what the budget changes were to get to that $62.5 million amount. We saw an increase in the general government budget by almost $600,000, a little bit over $900,000 to the Board of Education. And you saw decreases in both the debt service line item and the capital projects line item to come up with that total. A little bit about our 10-year history. I think we're both the town and the Board of Education and the superintendent of schools and myself are proud of our 10-year expenditure history, meaning, you know, the general government increase averaged over the last 10 years has been 2.6%. The Board of Education's budget over a 10-year period has averaged a 2% increase. And the total town budget, because we've had decreases in both the capital, what we contribute to capital projects as well as debt service, has resulted in an overall average town budget increase of a little under $1 million or 1.86%. To put that in a little bit of perspective, the 10-year average inflation rate was 1.73, so 73%. So our expenditures have just been slightly above the 10-year inflation rate average, and I think that's a very good record. I think both the town council and the Board of Education should be proud of that record, and which also reflects the fact that we've been able to maintain, in many instances, if not increase, the services that we provide to our citizens and to the students of Plainville. So I will now turn it over to Steve LePage to talk a little bit about the Board of Education's budget history.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Just quickly, there's a 10-year history of the Board of Education budget, kind of at a glance here that breaks it out by just the main object lines of salary, and then benefits and other, and then services across the top there. But if you look at the, as Mr. Lee had shared with the percentage of increase over the years, last year was 2.39, and then when you look over the 10-year period, there were years with zeros and 1.15 and you know, et cetera. We had, as you can see, in 16 and 17, and then 17 and 18 budgets were reduced mid-year by 100,000 and 300,000 due to the state grant being cut during the bit of a budget crisis at that point. And we had our ECS grant, which is, you'll learn about a little bit more later, that was cut. And then the due to the health insurance costs that you're aware of in 17, 18, these are things that had bigger impacts on our budget, but generally speaking, we are very reasonable budget increases that basically account for contractual things that are typically out of our control. And then finally, you'll see in 2019-20 at the bottom of this slide, through the budget surplus that resulted in COVID closures, there was $270,250 funded reductions to the 2021 capital plan, and then Another $641,679 was returned to the town's general fund that was unspent out of last year's budget. You go to the next slide, Kevin. Our per pupil expenditure for all that we do provide to our residents and our students in Plainville, we are low when you look at the ranks of the towns in Connecticut. Of 166 districts, we rank number 111 in cost per pupil expenditure of $17,428, ranking from highest to lowest. That just shows you every fifth town at the bottom. We couldn't fit them all on one graph. So just shows you where we rank according to the latest data in the state of Connecticut compared to other towns, how much we spend on education. And back to Robert for the next slide.
This slide speaks to the current year's budget expenditure line items. These are line items that we expect will deviate relatively significantly, at least as far as we know right now, from what was budgeted. For example, we're expecting the debt service line item to have a surplus in it of $190,000 from what was appropriated. And based on some action that may be taken by the town council during the regular, later on in this meeting, there's been some discussion about utilizing those savings going forward to offset the deficit in our health insurance trust fund account. We expect police overtime to go over budget by about $100,000. We expect our municipal solid waste fees, tip fees, to go over budget by about $68,000 due to higher tonnages that we have seen continue at a pace that people have speculated it's because of COVID-19 and a lot of people being home and being able to clean out a lot of their throwing away things that they normally wouldn't have time to throw away in the past. So we think that's going to continue for a while as well. We know that roadways overtime has run over budget. A portion of that was from the major storm that we had during the month of August, where we had roadways did some overtime, with respect to that. And also, as a result of that storm, there was a more than expected line item deficit in the roadways, other contractual, basically due to tree removals as a result of the storm. So we're anticipating right now that in the current year's budget, given these major changes and and pretty much everything else coming somewhere in on budget, that we will have we will overspend this year's budget by about $14,000. Turn it back to, I think, Steve on the next one.
Yeah. So this just shows the impact on the Board of Education budget of COVID and the financial impact. I had mentioned the bigger numbers, the 641, 679 going back to the general fund. That was money that had been budgeted that was not spent due to a number of factors related to COVID and closure. Still operating, but operating remotely last spring. And then the contribution back to the capital to pre-purchase some of the items that we agreed on last spring to help bring us down and get us to the zero tax increase, and then the total of 911, 929. The first bullet point really speaks to this is not a desirable thing. On the paper it may look good that there was money that was able to be returned, but I had spoken with Robert over the summer and very concerned about some of the learning loss and other things we will have to try to adjust and account for and remediate through our planning in the future budgets, when that money was returned or not used. Unsure of the grant funds that would be afforded to the town, and as I had shared with the Board of Education and the town council, we are fortunate that we have done a good job with keeping our kids in school and educating our students in the town. The state has, in addition to the coronavirus relief fund, initial amount of $235,000 that they allotted to Plainville for our education. They gave us an additional $645,000 that we expressed that we needed very badly in order to continue to keep our schools open safely. So that brought us up over $875,000, which is helping to not have us go back and ask for some of those funds back. We do have additional costs going forward to try to remediate and help our students to catch up from some of the learning loss that is inevitable, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But in addition, this year we're hoping, well, I shouldn't say we're hoping, we are we are thinking there may be some additional, realized savings, but the counter to that is that we had significant, unexpected, unanticipated special education outplacement costs. We had, students moving to town with pretty high needs and outplacements that are required, and also about $100,000 of anticipated food service losses due to the current situation and, the not serving food at the high school every day. There's grab and go meals, and our staff's done a great job of, curbside service and giving students meals on their way out. But there was a great deal of loss in the first few months. We're trying to balance that out. But so those are things that balance out some of the potential savings we might have. I don't know if you can, the last bullet point is missing, but over the coming weeks, we will develop a detailed forecast to the end of the year. I will be going through, as you know, the whole budget book with the Board of Education and kind of looking back and looking forward as well, of course. And as we stand right now on the next slide, the Board of Education 2019, the budget status as of December 31st. Yeah, salary and benefits are, as you know, on the Board of Education side, about 85% of the district's budget. Line 2 does include the full year of health insurance expenditures within that line for benefits. Line 5 includes special education tuition, offset in part by excess cost grant. And we expect to be more than, as I had said, $350,000 unfavorable to the budget. It's a very difficult number to project, and we're usually pretty close, but this year was an unusual year of special ed. And then the cafeteria costs, I had already mentioned, we're losing a projected $100,000 by the end of the year. So, but currently, our budget is trending to be, on target, hoping to come in a little bit under when all things are considered in the end.
The next slide speaks to a couple of items that we will be bringing to the council's consideration as to finish out the year as well on the expenditure side. One is our landfill fund. Last spring, we had a meeting, town council had a meeting with Ty and Bond, explaining that we are operating the landfill under what's known as a stewardship permit, which requires us to do certain items at the landfill to ensure that it's not it's being operated properly and not polluting surrounding areas. Currently, we owe the landfill funds running a deficit of about $88,000 for some of the work that Ty and Bond has done. We'll be bringing that back to the council for consideration between now and the end of the fiscal year. So that's why I put it under other considerations. And as you saw on a previous slide, the self-insurance fund was going to come in under budget. And we're looking to take that savings again as a recommendation and apply it against the self-insurance deficit. So that's why that number you saw, we were going to come under budget in a previous slide, and then we're going to look to appropriate it towards the self-insurance fund. So we're looking to, at some point in time, ask the council to consider making an appropriation of $278,000 between now and the end of the fiscal year. And I'll show you later how that would fit into the plan. Here's a lot of our good news for the fiscal year. One of them is our revenues. Right now, we're anticipating that building permits will exceed the budgeted amount of $350,000 by $688,000. So we're expecting that we're going to receive somewhere close to $1 million in building permit fees in the current fiscal year. The great majority of that is the result of the new Americold project being built on Northwest Drive. Personal property audits, we're expecting that we're going to net an additional $350,000 above the $150,000 that was budgeted for personal property audit revenue. We received some money from the coronavirus relief fund. We received a grant on the town side for $261,000. We used $161,000 of that to offset some of our increased costs as a result of that, leaving us with $100,000 in revenue above what our expenses have been to date with regards to coronavirus, at least on the town government side. That's not the Board of Education side. Conveyance taxes are coming. We're expected to come in about $50,000 higher than our budgeted amount of $200,000. A lot of that has to do with property transfers and people that are refinancing. And as they're, mostly property transfers The recording fees is a result of increases, result of refinancing. We have some miscellaneous state grants. We received $20,000 for distressed municipalities, which was additional revenues that the state legislature put together. We received that money already, and we see our police permits are coming in almost double of what we had budgeted. We attribute that to a lot of people getting pistol permits. I don't know if that's good or bad, but a lot of pistol permits above what we anticipated our people are getting. We expect on the revenue side that interest is going to come in significantly lower than what we originally budgeted. The rates took a tumble once we got into, once we got it, past our budget process in the spring and early summer. And as a result, we're seeing revenues come in lower. The net result of those, of this slide, and it's at the bottom, and I'm not sure that be able to show the bottom of it, but the total revenues, taking into account these line items here, would mean that we expect revenues to come in $1,170,000 above what we anticipated as part of the current year's fiscal budget, fiscal year 21. I'll turn the mic over to Steve.
All right. Just quickly, and I've shared this slide before, and it usually stays fairly static as far as the percentage funded by local, government and by the state funds through the ECS grant. So the local school budget is 28% funded by the state through the ECS grant, and 72% locally funded, based on a formula with several factors, including student count and the level of need for the community. On the next slide, it just shows, you've seen these graphs in the past, but unfortunately, I don't know if you can scroll up a little, Kevin, the bottom keeps getting cut off every time, I'm not sure. From 2013 to 17, Plainville received approximately $10,400,000 of ECS funding. The legislation recalculated a new formula that was going to be phased in, is being phased in over 10 years. 3 years in, we remain on track to receive an increase of about or a little over $200,000 each year. So Plainville is one of the fortunate communities that is receiving benefits from the ECS recalculated formula each year, and it has been trending, as the orange line shows you, in the right direction. So these revenues are paid to the town and benefit all residents, and they're received to counterbalance the cost of providing education to the residents here. So the conclusion is that Plainville will continue to benefit as long as this formula remains in place. We don't have any reason to believe it won't, but we're hopeful that it will remain in place. The next slide you've seen many, many times, just a different variation of it with some focus points. And I won't go through each of the focus points, but they really do relate to what we're seeing in not only in our community and in our world, but what we really need for our students. It was interesting. We developed this and had it approved by the board, and then shortly after, the state came out with their core areas of importance and significant work that they urged districts to put their time and energy into and their resources. And they happen to be equity, social and emotional learning, and then remediation and helping students to learn the skills they need to be successful and competitive in our world. So that, if you go back, Kevin, those were those three areas we had decided upon as a district to really focus those big buckets of equity, social, emotional learning, and mastery. And then the goals with the yellow arrows next to them are kind of not that everything on this page isn't important, it is, and it's been in place, especially our vision statement to inspire and prepare lifelong learners to follow their passion, engage in their communities, and positively impact our global society. And that's been our guiding light, and this is what we follow. And I know everybody makes fun of the 3 rings, but this is what we spend our focus on. Kevin, if you could take us to the Plainville Portrait of the Graduate. This is relatively new. It's been in the making for a couple of years, and it was approved and then put into place by our Board of Education after a lot of work by a whole district-wide committee that really looked at what skills we want our students to all have, starting at the young age of preschool all the way up. And there's different words that describe these. We're not going to expect preschoolers to walk around saying they're communicative or collaborative, but the variation of those words at that age and grade level. But this is what we're trying to achieve within all of our students and measure to a degree as students prepare to leave our school system and and be fruitful and productive and happy and balanced members of our society. So this Plainville Portrait of the Graduate is something you'll hear about a lot, and you probably already have with our portrait pioneers that we are celebrating at board meetings and other areas. So these are the vision in this slide, although they're not directly budget. Everything we do and everything we budget for ties back to these 2 slides. So it's really important. I think we include them. On the next slide, just talking about how everything ties back, when we look at building our budget, we really focus on what's most important for maintaining and expanding the opportunities and services that we provide to our children. And in order to do that, 85% of our budget is people and benefits. There are many contractual increases, and this is all through collective bargaining that has to be done. And I know this group all knows this, but anyone watching, the collective bargaining is something that our employees are guaranteed to, and has to be fair and competitive. And our attorneys and the bargaining group attorneys meet and with our board representatives and town council representatives are involved, and we make sure that we get a fair and reasonable contract with each of our groups. So we have 5 bargaining groups on the board side, and then some non-bargaining members. So it all boils down to contractual increases that total this year, including our health insurance expectation of 4.5%, which includes our regional adjustment. It boils down to $987,403 just for the contractual increases, or 2.52% budget increase, taking nothing else into account, just our contractual obligations. And then I'll finish out my part really quickly, I hope, and then Robert will close with some other items. But just talking about on the next slide, Kevin, the COVID-19 impact on Plainville Community Schools. And I included adapting and thriving through adversity. It's been a learning process since March 13th of last year. It's been an incredible amount of work, tenacity and perseverance, and being innovative and creative and collaborative, and all the things we talk about in the Portrait of the Graduate. This is our graduation, as you know, that we held in the parking lot at the high school, and it was very special, and I think everybody that was there would agree. But we had to rethink how we do everything in our school district and how we do it safely. On the next slide, this just shows you a graph that Sam was kind enough to create, that just shows you our enrollment and some of the challenges that we face as a district. We have had a total of about 476 remote students at the time we ran this graph, and we lost about 112 students in enrollment, which is a significant number. And I know the town population decreased a little bit, I think 0.5%, but for various reasons, and many of them were expressed to be COVID related or having to move with a relative somewhere else or another state or another town. We have lost some students in there, and we have a combination of students on full remote learning. That's the 476. We have all the students who are quarantined or isolated for COVID reasons, who then go into a remote learning temporarily until their quarantine session period's over. So we have a whole combination of things that our administrators and our teachers have been incredibly innovative in providing the best that they can for our kids. But within all of that, there's inherent learning loss and learning gaps that develop. Not everybody has the same supports at home. We have 2 working parents in a lot of families. We have children sometimes that have to be home with an older sibling, a lot of different combinations. So the reason I'm saying this is because in our budget, we have some strategies and personnel and programs that are going to be seeking to remediate some of those learning gaps, the social and emotional needs, and the likely deficits that have taken place due to COVID. I will contend that our learning loss and deficits are far, far less than most districts. And I'm very proud of the work we've done. But regardless, it's a very different world we're living in, and we do have those gaps. The next slide is just, I can't have a presentation without at least one slide with a bunch of pictures of our amazing kids and some staff in there too. I don't have too many staff members in there, but the work that everybody's doing, and I just put a few of all the different ways that students are learning and showing that still performing in music and art, and just the creativity is something to be proud of. And then speaking of being proud, and just a couple of quotes from parents. I'm grateful to be in this district where the families are generally incredibly appreciative, incredibly thankful, and expressive of that. Just a couple of quotes here, and I'm not going to read them to you, but the volume of positive feedback and kindness that I've seen from this community is incredible. Families are grateful. They know it's not easy. They know we're working really hard to do the best we can for their children, and we'll continue to do that. And that's why we're here. And my last slide is just my commitments to our board, to our town council, to our town members. Kevin, if you could go to the next slide, just our budgeting commitments. We'll continue to be thoughtful and mindful in our approach to budgeting. We'll request only what we believe essential to educate and support our students through the season of change. I thought the season tied in with a nice picture there at the high school. We'll continue to collaborate, communicate, innovate, remain mindful and resilient in the budgeting practices and in all things. Those are our portrait of the graduate. I have to embed it everywhere, of course. And we'll do our very best for the children, families, and our dedicated staff here in Plainville. So that's the end of my part. Now back to Robert.
And as you saw in an earlier slide, with Steve's challenges to his budget process for next year and some of the fixed costs and some of the anticipated increases, we've done, this slide shows, at least on the town side, and we are very early in our process as well with regards to estimates. But on the salary side, we're expecting that will increase the budget by about $325,000, with contractual salaries increases ranging from 2.25% to 3%. We expect our health insurance increase to be somewhere around 4.5%, according to some of the early information we're getting from the state of Connecticut. That was a similar increase, I believe, budget to budget as it was last year, but that 4.5% represents about $100,000. We talked about municipal solid waste running over this year. We anticipate that we will increase the budget somewhat. That could impact us $35,000, perhaps more than that. And on our defined benefit pension plan for both the town and the police, understanding that our anticipated monies, our expected return, we've been gradually trying to lower that over the years. Plus our salary increases would result in what we're anticipating from our advisors to be somewhere in of an increase somewhere in the area of about $70,000. So those are some of the things that I anticipate is going to drive the general government budget going forward into the next year. With respect to the capital budget, which is the next slide, the request on the general government side have come in at about $3.4 million for next year. The Board of Education request is a little bit under $500,000. That's a total of $3.9 million. On the bottom portion is kind of what my goal is for the capital project. I do not anticipate increasing the amount that we currently budget from the general government budget to capital, which is $313,860. That was a decrease of just a couple of years. It wasn't long ago that the general government budget was contributing somewhere close to $1 million towards capital projects, but we've shifted that by supplementing the capital improvement budget with some unassigned fund balance. I'm anticipating that's going to be somewhere around $1 million, and we have some low SEP funding that we've saved up over time at the state level of about $630,000. So of the $3.9 million request, I'm anticipating that I will be at least initially recommending to the town council a capital improvement budget of somewhere around $1.95 million, using those available resources that you see on the bottom half of the slide. I'd like to talk a little bit about the unassigned fund balance. Our unassigned fund balance, which is audited as of June 30th, 2020, is $10,351,839. That is a little bit over $600,000 higher than in fiscal year 20 than when we started in fiscal year 20. So that's the end of fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20, and that's again at the last fiscal year, not the current fiscal year. Our unassigned fund balance audited increased by a little bit over $600,000. With regards to, next slide there, Kevin, if you don't mind. These are some numbers that you saw earlier. That starting fiscal year 20 unassigned fund balance audited is that $10,351,000, represents 16.76% of revenues, anticipated revenues in fiscal year 20. We had budgeted in the current fiscal year $300,000 of tax relief. We had budgeted $980,000 to go to the fiscal year 21 capital improvement. That was all part of last year's budget. You see our estimated revenue surplus at an earlier slide of $1,170,000. You see our estimated expenditure deficit of minus $14,000 that was in an earlier slide. And you see the other considerations that I mentioned, which included the stewardship permit at the landfill and the appropriation to fund some surplus savings and expenditures on the debt from the debt fund to the health insurance fund. So that would mean that would lower our unassigned fund balance from $10,351,000 to $9.95 million. It would be a decrease from fiscal, July 1st of about $402,000. Well, that's, if you go to the next slide, Kevin. I would like to point out that we had anticipated lowering the fiscal year 20 unassigned fund balance by $1,280,000. And now we're only projecting that we'll only lower the fund balance by $402,000, which is actually a positive difference of almost $900,000. So again, we budgeted to use almost $1.3 million. It looks like we're only going to use, based upon what we know today, about $400,000. So we're $878,000 ahead of where we thought we would be at the beginning of this fiscal year as it relates to unassigned fund balance. Next slide, Kevin. We have two primary revenue increases that we're anticipating as far as the fiscal year 22 budget. One is our grand list. The assessor, Anne Marie Herring, completed the grand list last week. I shared some of those numbers with the town council. We expect, as a result of that increase in the grand list of 1.2%, that would generate approximately $580,000 in new revenues based upon the current mill rate. And you saw earlier in the slides with the Board of Education, with Steve's presentation, that the education cost sharing grant, we're anticipating that that's going to go up by a little bit over $234,000. I've had some preliminary discussions with both the Council of Small Towns and the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. I participated in a conference, video conference, a virtual conference last week. The governor was participated in that. He was asked if in fiscal year 22, what did he anticipate as far as state aid to local municipalities. He indicated that he doesn't anticipate any changes to the current education cost sharing grant. So we feel relatively comfortable that $234,000, almost $235,000 would be coming in our direction. And he indicated that he didn't anticipate that any teacher's pension would be shifted over to the towns, that would remain at the state, at least for the fiscal year 22, and that most other state aid would remain pretty close to what it's at right now. So we're not expecting that fiscal year 22 will result in any decrease in state aid to municipalities. And in fact, we're anticipating that the educational cost sharing grant will stay on target and actually have an increase. So we're anticipating that there'll be about $822,000 in additional revenues as a result of those two line items, all other revenue sources staying the same. On the expenditure side, what I plugged in here is the increase to the general government budget in fiscal year 21 was $593,000. And again, we are very early on in our budgeting process. So I said, okay, if our increase was the same as it was last year, $593,000, I use that number for our analysis. You did see earlier in the presentation, the Board of Education contractual increases represents $987,000 all, by itself. So that's an expenditure increase of $1,580,000, anticipating that CIP will stay the same and debt service will stay at the current levels as well. Next slide, Kevin. And this is a summary of how you would calculate a mill rate just based on those assumptions. You saw the revenue increase of $822,000. You saw an expenditure increase of $1,580,000. That's a difference of $758,000. That represents 0.54 mils or 1.6%. Just to kind of put all of those numbers in a perspective. And the last slide that we have is our budget schedule. This is all of the items on the budget schedule. These are kind of the highlights. The town manager's proposed budget presented to the town council by charter will be on Monday, March 1st. There will be a public hearing on the town manager's proposed budget on March 4th. From March 8th to March 18th, the town council would hold its work sessions. From anywhere from April 5th to April 7th, the town council would set a public hearing on the town council's recommended budget, and the all-day vote is scheduled for April 27th. That is the extent of our presentation this evening. Again, I want to thank Steve LePage and his staff, and my staff as well, Rob Buden, Matt Daskell, and others for putting this presentation together. Hopefully it gives you a feel for at least a starting point where we think we're going for the fiscal year 22 budget, as well as how we're going to finish up the current fiscal year. Certainly would welcome any questions that any members of the town council or the Board of Education. Steve, I don't know if you have any.
No, just want to thank Robert and Rob Buden and Matt Daskell as well for their collaboration and working on this presentation and having open and honest conversations about needs and resources. And I think we work well together on behalf of the town, and I look forward to hopefully a productive budget season.
Does anybody have any questions for either the town manager or the superintendent of schools regarding their presentation at this point? Robert, I just have a quick question for you, and it has to do with the overtime that we incurred during the August storm Isaias. Were we able to procure any FEMA funding? Did the state of Connecticut get anything that might be applied towards some of those overtime for our folks and for the contractors that we had to hire?
That's a very timely question, Kathy, because last week FEMA announced that they made Connecticut eligible for that storm. And so we are anticipating that we will be getting 75% reimbursement for eligible costs. So we're still working through that, but that's another positive item that we can add to the revenue side. I'm not sure if we have an estimate at this point because we're still trying to get through what's eligible, what's not eligible. We think that could be anywhere from, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, anywhere from $75,000, somewhere in that range. Additional.
Yeah, that's a good estimate at this point in time.
So we could add, we could expect, all things being equal, that on the revenue side, we may bring in another $75,000 as a result of that storm.
Okay, so that'll help with our year-end expenditure issues, at least in that department at this point in time.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody have any other questions for the town manager or Superintendent LePage? I'm just a statement. Looking at one of the slides that Steve had regarding municipal funding versus the ECS funding for the schools. It's like a 72% town municipal funding versus a 28%. Did I look at that correctly? Is that right, Steve?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so in years past, the funding is now shifting from the state's contribution onto the municipalities. In years past, it had been at sometimes like 62 to 38 or something in that range, but now it looks as if the state is contributing far less toward education and depending on local property tax to take up the other part. So do you, Robert, I know that you're involved with, it's either Council of Small Towns or one of your other organizations that has been looking at the municipal tax dependence on local property taxes. Is there any information or what direction can we foresee this going? Or are we going to continue on this other trend?
That's that's a hard question to answer because you're right. The state has been lowering their percentage with regards to their share of education to municipalities for many years, and we have been working as a group with the boards of education and the superintendents to at least get the state to perhaps pick up more of the cost of special education, which is a very volatile number, or can be a very volatile number because of the costs involved. And we hope to be able to make some progress with respect to that. We've also asked the state to allow towns, state legislature to allow towns to have other sources of revenue to help, to help us pay for some of these costs. To date, the legislature has been reluctant or to make any major changes. We think there may be some opportunities this year as part of the conversation we had with the governor last week. He did recognize that property taxes, the impact of property taxes is very significant in Connecticut. And he seemed to be saying all the right things with regards to, keeping an open mind with regards to his budget that he expects to release, second week in February. So I guess time will tell, but it's hard to tell where it's going to go. We certainly have made suggestions. The legislature has been somewhat reluctant to adopt any of those recommendations as of yet.
I'd
Well,
say
let's see.
we're a little more
Go
focused
ahead.
in some districts where the ECS has been through the formula that's being phased down substantially. I know colleagues who are in districts where the ECS funding is going the wrong direction. At least ours is still going up at a pretty good amount, but you're right. And for as long as I can remember the split, I haven't been a superintendent very long and an administrator for that long, for that matter. But a long time ago, the funding difference was much more on the state. But you're right. That's something that we are always contending with and trying to get more from the state.
Well, it seems from what I've read, a lot of the resource, and I won't say all the resources, but there has been a shift of resources to large cities where the schools are underperforming and a lot of demographics that are very different from Plainville. But it seems to me that a lot of the financial resources are now being dedicated to those large cities with underperforming school districts. And as a result, smaller municipalities and towns such as Plainville is going to be having to make up the difference from their local tax dollars. So I just didn't know if you had heard or if there's any kind of action trying to sort of even this out a little bit. And I'm not sure where this is going to end up, because at this rate, in the next 10 years, it looks like local tax dollars are going to support almost 90% of the local education dollars, which are going to continue to rise anyway.
Yeah, and some of the reasons for that shift is because of court actions that have happened as well. The courts have ordered that some of the additional resources need to be directed towards some of the underperforming districts and the larger cities. And as a result of the pie not getting any larger, it's taken from one group and applying it somewhere else. So unless the pie gets bigger, that certainly trend will continue.
Correct.
Okay, well, thanks for your input. That's just an observation. And, this has been changing over the past 10 or 15 years. And I noticed that our share has been increasing while our ECS, share has not been as much as we would hope it to be. So just an observation.
And while that percentage has certainly increased over time, as you saw in the earlier slide, our average total budget increase has been somewhere around 1.87%, which is just, I think a remarkable record given, some of the things that are working against us, and the inflation rate is not much lower than the average, budget increase over that 10-year period. So I think with the cooperation of all the people, participating in this meeting today, both today and past, we've been able to overcome that. But there's only so many things you can do. At some point in time, something could have a larger impact. One of the benefits that we have is the AmeriCorps project, which in next year and the year after will significantly increase our grant list and help to offset some of those trends as well. But how long does that last?
I understand. Well, I'm glad that I can say from experience that I believe Plainville has tried to do the very best job they can, keeping the taxpayer in mind and coming up with some innovations so that we can get some things done without having to adversely impact those who are going to pay the bill. It's unfortunate the state doesn't have the great minds that Plainville has. That's all I can say.
Well,
Yeah, can you hear me?
yes.
Yep.
I just wanted to throw in a couple of things. First of all, just wanted to mention that the board budget, the presentation that you just saw, obviously same thing. We're in a very preliminary place with just looking at the contractual obligations there, so things could change considerably on that front. But the other thing about the state and superintendent, Mr. Adlerstein, or somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not all just, when you're looking at the percent, it's not all just the ECS. It also has to do with our special education costs and how much reimbursement we're getting there too. So I think it's not just that one pot of money. And we are in Plainville fortunate because it's absolutely true, as Mr. LePage said, that many communities are seeing extreme reductions in the amount of money that we're getting, and we are actually getting an increase. Unfortunately, that increase doesn't keep pace with everything else. That's the problem, and it's a long-term problem. And I know we've been kind of trying to figure out a solution to that for a long time now. Far too long, I think we've been trying to figure out a solution to that. But I also just want to thank the town manager and superintendent for the presentation. This is a good place to know where we're jumping off from. So thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Right. So thanks to everybody that was involved in putting together this information. And as we have heard more than once, these are quite preliminary. I'm sure they're based in reality, but there is more work to be done by both the board and by the town side, in addition to the town council. So thank you for the preview. Certainly things to think about as we go forward and as the board begins their deliberations this Thursday, I believe. Is that right?
Yes. Thursday, so.
Okay. Well, does anybody have any further questions for either the superintendent or the town manager at this point regarding their presentation for the budget? Okay, thank you so much. In that case, we shall move on to the rest of the council's agenda. We do not have a public hearing this evening. And at this point, I'll ask for approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go
motion
ahead.
to approve the January 4th, 2021 regular meeting minutes.
Motion, Madam Chair.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any additions or corrections to that motion or to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is announcements and reports. Before we go into any of the council announcements, I have a statement that I would like to read this evening. This statement was generated as a result of Roberta Brown and Lynn Davis. They are co-chairs of the Plainville Coalition for Positive Youth Development. In their discussions with the folks that are on that board and the young people that are members of that group, there is a concern about about recent events which made people feel unsafe in their respective communities, not particularly Plainville, but across our country. There's been a lot that has been going on. And Roberta thought, and along with Lynn, thought it might be beneficial for a statement to come from the town leaders. And the statement was put together with contributions from various people. And what I would like to do is read the statement right now, and this will be distributed to various news organizations. I'm sure it'll be up on local Facebook and websites from both the town and the Board of Education. So that is that's the introduction to that, and I will begin. Plainville has a long history of being a community that cares deeply about all its residents, children, and families. We are a town made up of people of many colors, ethnic backgrounds, religious and political beliefs. Despite our differences, we go to school, work, and live peacefully amongst each other. As community members, parents, elected officials, and leaders in Plainville, it is imperative that we set an example for our children. We must let them know that they are safe in our schools and community. We must model decency, respect, and civility, whether it is through in-person discussions, via social media exchanges, or in any other form of communication. We must show them that despite our differences, we can and will discuss and resolve issues without violence, disrespect, and offensive, hurtful behavior. It is imperative that we continue to teach and model the value of independent and critical thinking, as well as productive and civil disagreement and debate. The importance of questioning sources and content is essential to avoid believing false or unsubstantiated information that can lead to dangerous outcomes. Violence is never acceptable. As a united community, we strongly condemn all acts of violence and ask every member of the Plainville community to defend our democratic ideals and show our children that we resolve differences in a peaceful and respectful manner. Offensive language, name calling, and other displays of hatred have no place in our schools and community. No acts or incidents of prejudice, bigotry, or racism will be tolerated in Plainville. We must lead the way so that our children feel safe and supported by the adults in our schools, our neighborhoods, and our community. The letter has been signed by Roberta Brown and Lynn Davis, co-chairs of the Plainville Coalition for Positive Youth Development. It has been signed by myself as chair of the Plainville Town Council, Deborah Tompkins, vice chair of the Plainville Town Council, Jesse Nazzo, Rosemary Moranti, Jacob Rocco, David Underwood, Christopher Wazarko, all town council members. Also signed by Becky Terrell, chairperson of the Plainville Board of Education, Crystal St. Lawrence, vice chair of the Plainville Board of Education, Brent Davenport, Deborah Hardy, Rebecca Martinez, Laurie Peterson, Kathy Wells, Foster White, all Board of Education members. In addition, the letter was signed by Robert E. Lee, our town manager, and Steve LePage, our superintendent of schools. I want to thank those who took the time to create this document. I think it's an important statement, and it's timely considering the events of the past several weeks and months. And we need to make sure people understand that the spirit of Plainville is a peaceful, respectful town that will never support any type of violence, whether it's verbal or in action. So I thank you all of you for agreeing to sign to that statement, and that will be published in the local media in the upcoming days. So having said that, asking if there are any other announcements or reports from the town council this evening.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Rosemary.
Yes, I did attend the January meetings of the Conservation Commission and the Library Board of Trustees. The Conservation Commission is discussing some spring activities. Hopefully that will be able to be carried out. And at the Library Board meeting, they reviewed the FY22 budget proposals as developed by the director. And the library is open and it's still functioning well within the parameters of COVID precautions. And that's it.
Thanks, Rosemary. Does anybody else have anything to add to our announcements and reports this evening? Okay. Thanks, Rosemary. We'll be moving on to appointments and resignations. We have one appointment this evening. May I have a motion for the Conservation Commission appointment?
Madam Chair?
Rosemary,
Okay, motion to ratify the town manager's appointment of Eileen Ayala, 248 Farmington Avenue, to the Conservation Commission for the term ending January 15th, 2024.
Second.
thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Do we have any other appointments or reappointments to boards and commissions tonight?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Underwood,
3 appointments due for new terms to the Aviation Commission. Robert Mastriani, 261 Camp Street, Reed Clemens, 87 Farmington Avenue, and David King, Trumbull Avenue. Terms to 10/31/2023.
may I have a second to that motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Are there any other appointments this evening?
Madam Chair, an appointment to the Housing Authority. Leona Bisson, 216 Trumbull Avenue. Her new term will be 1/31/2021 to 1/31/2026.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Are there any other appointments this evening? Okay, hearing none, we'll move along. Next on our agenda is the Board of Education liaison. Becky, I know you're here. We've heard about the preliminary budget. I didn't know if you had anything else you'd like to share with us tonight.
Not really. I don't have a prepared report or anything, but I would just like to, the importance of what our staff has been doing, and by staff I mean from the superintendent all the way down to every single person in the building, is just nothing short of amazing during this time. It's difficult work. People are on edge, and these are some really difficult times. But I'm really proud of the work they're doing. I'm really proud of the effort they've been putting in. And these are just some unprecedented things. And I've, in my own job, having to deal with school districts and whatnot, I keep telling people there's no good decision. What it is you've got a decision you really don't like, and you've got another decision you really don't like, and you have to make the decision about which one you like the less. You hate the least, I should say. And that's what it comes down to. And in education, that's not what we're used to. We're used to making good decisions because that's what everybody wants to do. And so to have to, come up with solutions to make this work is really, really tough for people. So I really just want to give them my appreciation, and I know the appreciation of the rest of the board as well. So I think that's it. That's all I'm going to say. And I have not been, I've been absent at your meetings. I'm going to try and make sure I get in and check in with you guys on a monthly basis. So I apologize for my absence.
We understand that, Becky. I don't make all of the board meetings as much as I try. Sometimes things like life get in the way, and there it is. But thank you for contributing tonight. I certainly appreciate that. And yes, I agree with your summation of the challenges that the education world is facing. It is daunting. It is unrelenting. And it will be ongoing, I fear, for some time. But thank you for all that you guys do. And I would thank the town as well, because we too have had our moments of challenges. And we want everybody to be well, and we want everybody to get back to where we hope to be. So appreciate your thoughts. That's very nice of you to do that. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, I know our town attorney is here. Do we have a report tonight?
Madam Chair, thank you. No, we don't have anything to report tonight, but
Always good to see you.
okay.
Thank you for dropping in.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, so we're moving on to Robert. It's the report of the town manager right now. So I'm going to turn it over to you. You have a lot of things on your report, and I'll let you to get going on it.
And I just, certainly members of the Board of Education and the superintendent of schools and his staff, you're certainly welcome to stay for the entire meeting. But if you want to watch it on YouTube later, that would be fine as well. So I don't think we'll feel bad if Board of Ed members, again, you're welcome to stay on, but if you want to check out, that won't be counted against you, so to speak. So just wanted to get that out of the way.
Always fascinating, Robert. You're always fascinating.
He says he's got a lot more work to do with that budget, so he's going to start right now.
Yeah, start. I hope not.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.
First item I have is the Health Insurance Trust Fund. At your December 21st meeting, the town council, there was a discussion regarding the deficit of the self-insurance health fund. At that time, a plan was presented that would utilize future savings in the debt service line item to eliminate the deficit. Town staff has drafted a resolution regarding the Health Insurance Trust Fund for your consideration. And there is an item of the new business regarding the resolution. I don't know if anybody has, I think it's pretty straightforward and kind of lays out what the situation is and how that deficit would be made up. And I think it's very important to have a policy in place so that if there's any questions from our either auditors or from our financial advisors or our rating agencies when we go to permanently bond, for example, the remainder of the Wheeler School project, that will stick out as an issue, a potential financial issue. But if we have this policy in place, I think it will give a commitment of how that's going to be taken care of in a reasonable manner without significantly impacting the tax rate, or upsetting our budget. So if there's no questions with regards to that proposal, I'll move on to the next steps regarding the White Oak project. During the last town council meeting, Lorero Consultants presented their review and evaluation of the two proposals submitted for the redevelopment of the White Oak property. The town council was also informed that the Planning and Zoning Commission, Economic Development Agency, and the Plainville Chamber of Commerce had endorsed the residential, industrial, retail, community, and outdoor space use proposal submitted by Manafort and others, as opposed to the office, industrial, and outside storage use proposed by D'Amato/Meyer. Capital Region Council of Governments also pointed out that the Manafort proposal is in conformity with and supportive of the region's plans and policies. Since the last meeting, 7 letters or emails have been received from residents and business owners supportive of the Manafort proposal. And I think we included at least 6 of them in your package this evening and sent you the 7th one earlier today by email. Information about each of the proposals have been posted on the town website. Residents and business owners can also provide feedback on the proposals as well by going online. While the purchase price submitted by D'Amato was $550,000 higher than the Manafort proposal, the Lorero report estimated that the Manafort proposal would result in $357,000 more in building permit fees, $100,000 more annually in sewer user fees, and $387,000 more annually in tax revenues when completed as proposed. Town staff is preparing a pre-application to the Department of Economic and Community Development in mid-February for a remediation grant to clean up the property. A full application for the grant is due by April 7th of this year as well. Town staff is seeking town council thoughts on how they would like to proceed with this project. One of the recommendations that I am making, or I would suggest, is that the town council, recognizes that we have to move forward with some type of memorandum of understanding with regards to the development of the property. And it might make sense for the council to consider perhaps having a executive session to discuss the parameters of this negotiation, regardless of which developer it may be, which proposal it may impact, to discuss the the strategy with regards to this negotiations. So that might be a recommended next step, but I'll leave it up to the town council to decide how you'd like to proceed given where we're at this moment.
Robert, do you want to have an answer right now, or do you want to continue and then we'll take questions at the end?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Finish up your rest of your
Sure.
report.
Next item I have is temporary committees to consider disbanding. Over the years, the town council has created several temporary committees to address specific short duration projects. Town staff is recommending that the town council consider disbanding the following temporary committees as their work has been completed. They are the Clean Energy Task Force, the Old Linden Street School Committee, the 150th Anniversary Celebration Committee, and the Complete Count Committee for this 2020 census. There is an item under new business regarding this recommendation. You could choose to do none, one, or all four, whatever combination. So, that's something that we thought we'd bring forward for your consideration this evening. With regards to the COVID-19 update, I mean, it seems like it's a 24/7 issue with regards to dealing with the pandemic. It's still predicted to get worse before it gets better in terms of people being infected and impacts such as that. But the latest we have has to do with vaccines. People who are eligible to be able to schedule to get a vaccine now are individuals 75 years of age and over. The next group, which will likely be in early February, are individuals 65 years of age or over. And then beyond that, with information coming soon, likely in early March, according to what we've heard today through the state officials, is frontline essential workers and individuals with underlying medical conditions with increased risk for severe illness. It's anticipated that in early March, those individuals would be eligible to make scheduled for vaccines as well. So this is taking a little bit longer than perhaps what was anticipated, but this is at least the schedule as we understand it right now. With regards to the financial dashboard, because we spoke earlier in the discussion in our meeting about our financial situation in the current fiscal year, we did include it in the meeting package for this evening, and it was posted on the town website. Unless the council wants us to go into detail with regards to the dashboard, I'll just skip that report today, understanding that we talked about a lot of these items, especially as it relates to the unassigned fund balance and where we stand with the current expenditures and revenues. So I thought I'd not go into detail at this meeting and move on to happenings with Matt Daskell to report on some of the happenings, and then we'd be available to answer questions when we're completed. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Good evening, through you, Town Manager Lee and Chairperson Puglisi. Taxes are due in January, and this is the town real estate, personal property, and motor vehicles. Supplemental bills are due January 1, 2021, delinquent after February 2021. We spoke about this at the last meeting. The town council adopted a deferral program for property tax relief as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This program is an extended grace period for taxes that are due January 1, 2021 and defers the last day to pay without interest. It doesn't defer the tax. Further information is available on the town website, plainvillect.com, or in the Assessment and Revenue Collection Office. Fire prevention, everyone, every day. The Town of Plainville Fire Marshal's Office is announcing that this year's winner of the Fire Prevention Everyone Every Day poster contest. This is an annual event for 4th and 5th graders to raise awareness and make families alert to everyday efforts related to fires and fire prevention. It also builds connections between the fire department and emergency services in the town and children and their families. This year's winners, and congratulations, go to Devin Langret of Hawthorne School in Miss Parker's classroom, and Chloe and Julia in the Wheeler School from Miss Miller's classroom. Again, congratulations to the winners. Due to the COVID pandemic, awards will be presented privately in the classroom with a prize for each student. Winners are then submitted to the county level, at which point it then proceeds to the state level. So we'll see how that may proceed going forward. Senior Center is open for in-person programming, as we've talked about. It is by appointment. COVID drive-through testing continues, the next session being Tuesday, January 26th, 9 to 1. Testing is free. It's a drive up, no insurance required, and can get tested if you have been before. Additional programs include some that we mentioned this past happenings for the council, including Gratitude is the New Attitude, Virtual Adventures, a Zoom rock climbing session, paper folding on Zoom, Spice It Up this month, exploring turmeric as a spice and how you can cook with that. The Super Soup cooking this month is tomato basil with grilled cheese croutons, if anyone's considering dinner options. Calligraphy class, and as always, the Senior Center is there to assist with Zoom and other needs as individuals might have. With that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate your information. Robert, thank you for yours as well. I'll open up for questions or comments to the council of Robert or Matt's report. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, good job. Thank you both for your contributions. We'll move on through the agenda. No old business. We do have a couple of items on our new business agenda, a couple of new business items we need to take care of. So I'm looking for a motion for item number 1, please.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Tompkins.
motion to adopt a resolution entitled I'm sorry, I'm having a problem reading this. So resolution regarding the Health Insurance Trust Fund. Sorry about that.
Fine. May I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nazzo. I have a motion and a second. Is there any comment on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any nays? Okay. Item number 2, please.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
motion to disband the following committees. So it has a list of 4 committees, and I think we're supposed to discuss if we don't think that they should be disbanded. So motion to disband the following committees: Clean Energy Task Force, Old Linden Street School Committee, 150th Town Anniversary Celebration Committee, and Complete Count Committee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on any of these committees that we are looking to disband at this time? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Let's see what else. Item number 3, please.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion
Ms.
to approve the tax refunds is listed on the addendum.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Do we have any other items of discussion at this point in time? Mr. Lee, do you have anything else you'd like to bring forward?
I do not. I do not.
Thank you. Any council members have anything they'd like to bring forward at this time? Okay, great. We do not have an executive session, so I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Just
Mr.
a
Rizzo.
quick question. I thought we were going to come back to the White Oak property before we adjourned.
I asked if anybody had any comments regarding that, and there were none, so we moved on through the agenda. Mr. Lee's recommendation at this point is to schedule an executive session.
Yeah, so I'm going to, without not hearing any objection, I assume that the council would like for me to coordinate that, and I will be in touch with the council members probably tomorrow to try to set something up as quickly as possible.
Everybody all right with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely,
Yes.
definitely.
Excellent. Okay, very good. So I have a motion. Do I have a second for the adjournment?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a good week. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. Stay well.
Have a good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.